The hunger was real. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw it in Mumbai, I saw it in the townships. I traveled all around KZN. I traveled to so many rural, weird, crazy places. And it was the same story over and over and over again. Desperation. My name is Clint Mclean. I'm an artist, steel sculptor, operating out of kind of Los Angeles and Durban. It's a strange commute, but I do the miles, and I build mainly in the States and sell over there, and then run Ubuntu Army now here in South Africa. I was born in Durban and grew up in Durban. I've never lived in any other province really, and when I finished school, I studied a degree in environmental management, environmental science and geographic science, and came out of that and didn't really know what I wanted to do, and ended up heading off to Mozambique, onto a little island, and developed my love for diving and fishing and sailing. And then from there moved over to Europe, to London, and in London taught for a while, was a school teacher in some very, very interesting schools in South London, and then discovered blacksmithing, and that changed everything. Like developed a love for bending metal, for hammering metal, and my first forge that I ever worked in was at Nebworth Castle, which was an incredible place to have learnt. Ended up working in film and television for 20 years. I built a huge number of projects for the TV show, basically kind of looking at how machines can be repurposed and built into kind of very peculiar kind of versions of themselves. So we built aeroplanes and hovercraft and tanks and jet boats and jet bikes and hot air balloons, like literally everything. And then I came back to South Africa when my dad got sick. When I heard he was sick, I flew back and I quit my jobs over in the States, and I stayed with him for a while until he passed away. And then I just kind of cruised in Durban for the next 10 years, doing commissioned art pieces, building my own sculptures, doing a lot of directing, commercials, television shows, film, and just kept a finger in kind of a couple of creative pies, I guess. Before COVID hit, I was living, I guess, a slightly, in real terms, peculiar life. I was doing the backwards and forwards between LA and Durban. But you know, in LA, it was a 7 to 7 working day in the workshop, building art. And then chilling in the evenings and surfing on the weekends. Durban was something similar, although I usually treated Durban as more of a chill out to get kind of some of the stress out of me from the LA experience. Very, very busy city. So when lockdown was announced, I initially thought that it would be a great idea to escape into the mountains with my son, my youngest son, and just spend 3 or 4 months living on the farm in nature, not having to deal with the drama of lockdown and isolation and all that sort of thing, having lots of space around us, and I thought it would be a good idea. And I spent one day kind of preparing for that trip. And then I went to bed and woke up one morning, well, 2 mornings after I guess it was announced, and I just knew something changed. I still don't know how to explain this experience, what happened to me, but I just knew that I had to stay in Durban. And I knew that I had to face this, I had to fight this. And I've said this before, but it really, at that time, felt like war. It felt like there was an enemy coming, and it felt like it was superbly dangerous, and I felt like it was time to stand and face it. My life changed immediately, like forever, right at that moment. I literally felt like from the moment I had that awakening, it was like I was on a mission, and it didn't matter what else happened, everything was just gonna take care of itself. I had this weird faith. And I'm not a religious human. Like I just went, I'm just doing this, no matter what happens. I just started distributing, and I would take masks to every informal settlement that I could, to every township, to any vulnerable community, basically, that didn't have access to necessarily the kind of the funds to buy these specialist masks that were being offered. And so, I started with masks and respirators, and within a week I was delivering soup and food and from expired food from shopping centres into the townships because all the logistics broke down. People's general logistics broke down, and I wasn't worried. I got involved in the refugees right up front as well, with serving the refugees of Durban. They were forgotten by our government completely. They were locked inside their homes with no food. They had no rights. They had no papers. They had no SASSA grants. They had nothing. They were brutalized at times in the early days by the cops because there was a lack of imagination, a lack of knowledge about COVID. So people were beaten and they were terrified. And that's really where Ubuntu Army started. You know, we've now developed relationships with informal settlements around KZN, with townships around KZN, with the hostels, with everyone. If my truck now goes into a township, for instance, anywhere without even me in it, they're like, that's Clint's truck. We've fed, we don't know how many. We've fed many thousands of people. The hunger was real. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw it in Bambai. I saw it in the townships. I traveled all around KZN. I traveled to so many rural, weird, crazy places in the first 8 months, and it was the same story over and over and over again. Desperation, households of men, women, kids, chunks of each, in just all desperate for food, and all so appreciative. You bring 10 bags of mealie meal and you say, there you go, and some tins and some vegetables. In tears, old couples telling me properly, crying when I've given them food, saying we thought we were going to die. The government abandoned us. We thought we were going to die. Thank you so much. Our faith is restored. You know, these sorts of things. Like if Ubuntu Army, as it stands right now, is a collective of everyday, ordinary, garden variety South Africans, hadn't stepped up and started feeding people, I think, it's difficult to know whether people would die. I feel like in certain areas they could have. I certainly know that a lot of children would have suffered and most probably died. On an artistic level, I feel like I've done everything I needed to do. I'm going to see where my art range goes and see if people actually step up and buy it. Otherwise, I'm going to be in for a career path change. Ubuntu Army is in such a good place. Like, I'm super excited about what's happening with it. We're getting registered as an NPO in California. One of the things that comes with that is that we have access to really good funding. And what I'd love to do, where I see Ubuntu Army kind of going in the future, I'm into sustainability, independence, self-reliability, that kind of self-reliance, that sort of thing. So I'm looking at micro-urban gardening. So just gardening in shack settlements, on the walls, and vertical gardening, and we're looking at ways of kind of doing that. We're getting a lot of traction in the States. A lot of people believe in the project. We've already planted 100 Ubuntu farms throughout KZN. Each farm was a bag of, like 8 bags of compost and 100 plants, 100 vegetables, and we're going to be now doing a lot more of that. If anyone wants to get involved or support Ubuntu Army, the first thing that I would say, and the most important thing, is you can do it without even having to join our group. You can do it on your own terms, which is what Ubuntu Army is about. Ubuntu Army is literally, I am because we are. And it's about actually taking responsibility as an individual for your community and for your country. You, of course, if you want to support us directly and you want to get involved in our micro gardening, our micro farming in the settlements, then jump onto www.ubuntuarmy.org, and then you can also join our Facebook groups, Ubuntu Army and Ubuntu Link, and both of them have got kind of ideas and actions that you guys can follow through on. I don't believe that our country can survive without the people working together. I really don't. I don't think it's possible. So I would say compassion builds community. Reach out, act compassionately towards those without, and try and build some bridges, mend some fences. And that's pretty much the best thing you can probably do for us and for our country.